Welcome to your weekly leadership principle by Coach AJ and the mentor team at Martin County PAL. At Martin County PAL, our goal is not discipline, it is growth. We meet youth where they are and help them develop into healthy, productive leaders for the future. This week, the conversation focused on taking initiative and defeating procrastination. And we actually just walked out of the live session.
Yeah, we literally just got out of the room.
Right. And I have to say, I'm still processing it. We do these deep dives to really unpack what goes on in there. And today got incredibly real very fast.
You really did.
It wasn't just a lecture. It felt like a mirror was being held up to the future leaders in that room. And honestly, to the adults sitting in the back, too.
Oh, absolutely. I was sitting there reflecting on my own role as a parent, watching their body language shift as the weight of the concepts landed. It really reframed what taking initiative actually means in everyday life.
Right. But what struck me wasn't even the core lesson initially. It was the standard Coach AJ set the absolute second we walked through the door.
Oh, the opening.
Right. You had that typical pre-session buzz. Kids are shuffling in, grabbing their name tags, finding seats. It's chaotic.
Just normal youth group energy.
Exactly. But Coach AJ, he spots two students chatting in the back, and he separates them right out of the gate.
I saw you wince when he did that.
I did. I totally cringed. I was thinking, is this too harsh for the very first 2 minutes? They were just quietly chatting.
Right, but he didn't yell.
No, he was super calm. He just looked at one of them and said, I asked you a couple of weeks ago not to talk, and you still have, so I'd rather just ask you to move ahead of time.
Yeah.
But I thought, man, he's risking alienating them before he even begins the lesson.
I know, but if you look at the psychology behind it, it's not about punishment at all. It's about, containing an infection.
An infection, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, because he explicitly told the room right after that, if you bring a negative perception, or if you're just physically present but mentally checked out, you are infecting the person sitting next to you.
Right. He established this baseline reality that just having your physical body in a chair, just sitting there, does not equal participation.
Which is such a shift, because most of us operate under the assumption that showing up is like 80% of the work.
Exactly. And he was telling them, no, showing up is 0% of the work if your mind is actively resisting the environment. And it completely worked.
It did. The room totally shifted.
By the time he got into the actual opening activity, he had their complete undivided attention.
Which they really needed for that actual versus wish reality check he did.
Oh, man, that was fascinating to watch.
It really was. Watching them navigate those scenarios, it was like a masterclass in behavioral psychology. Coach AJ would present these difficult, everyday scenarios.
Like the noisy classroom one.
Right. The teacher hasn't arrived yet, and the room is loud and chaotic. And he asked the youth to mark what they actually do, and then put a star next to what they wish they did.
Yeah, like, do you join the chaos? Do you stay quiet and just, scroll on your phone? Or do you take charge and help reset the room?
And the discrepancy between the actual and the wish was just massive.
Huge. But the scenario that really stopped me in my tracks was the cafeteria example.
Oh, yeah. That one was heavy.
Coach AJ painted this picture of someone sitting completely alone, clearly uncomfortable, and he asked the room to raise their hands if they would actually walk over and talk to that person.
And out of all those future leaders in that room, maybe 4 hands went up?
Yeah, 4, maybe 5. The rest honestly admitted they would either think about it but walk past, or they'd just mind their own business entirely.
Which, if you're listening to this right now as a parent, I want you to pause and ask yourself that same question.
Right, would you do it?
Exactly. Would you actually walk across a crowded room to talk to a stranger? Or do you just mind your business too? Because it's such a vulnerable thing to admit.
It is, but it exposes this huge conflict between our empathy and our biological fear of rejection.
Yeah, that one young woman who spoke up.
Right, she admitted she was terrified the person wouldn't welcome the interaction and she'd look foolish. We are just fundamentally wired for social self-preservation.
We really are.
But I want to push on that self-preservation idea for a second, because sitting there in the back, I was wondering, are we just making excuses for what is essentially laziness?
That's a tough question.
I mean, isn't it just that apathy has become our default setting? We build all these logical-sounding excuses in our heads, like, oh, they might not want me to talk to them, or it's not my problem.
Right.
But beneath all that logic, it's simply the path of least resistance. It takes 0 calories to do nothing.
Okay.
Taking initiative requires you to actually spend social and emotional energy.
Well, that's a fair challenge. But I don't think it's just laziness. I really don't.
You don't think so?
No, I think it's more about executive function and how the brain works. The human brain is constantly scanning for threats,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
And for a teenager, social rejection feels like a literal survival threat to the amygdala.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that makes sense.
So when they choose apathy, they aren't just being lazy. Their brain is actively conserving emotional calories to avoid a perceived danger.
Which makes Coach AJ's transition to the pond analogy so important.
Exactly. He had to show them how to overcome that friction.
The physics of taking action. I loved how he asked one of the students to describe what happens when you throw a stone into a perfectly still pond.
Such a great visual.
The youth described how the water doesn't just make one tiny circle. The splash creates these expanding ripples that move outward until they hit the edges of the whole pond. And Coach AJ used that to define initiative. He said doing the right thing without being asked is the stone.
Yeah, it breaks that surface tension of apathy.
Exactly. It creates a positive ripple effect that alters the whole environment for everyone else.
But the flip side of that is procrastination. If initiative is the stone creating positive ripples, procrastination is like a vacuum.
Just sucking the oxygen right out of the room.
Yes. And the whole session shifted dramatically when they started exploring the physics of inaction.
Oh, when the retired fireman stood up.
The energy in the room went from curious to incredibly somber so fast.
You could literally feel the temperature drop. Because up until that point, I think everyone, myself included, honestly viewed procrastination as this quirky individual flaw.
Like, oh, I put off my homework, I get a bad grade, my problem.
Exactly. But this mentor entirely shattered that illusion. He told this story from his career about a fire engine crew that responded to a routine car accident.
Right.
They used up all their absorbent material to clean up the fluids on the road, which depleted their truck supply.
Which is totally standard procedure.
Totally normal. But the failure happened when they returned to the firehouse.
Yeah, this is where the procrastination comes in.
Right. They procrastinated. They were supposed to drive to the supply depot and restock the engine immediately, but they put it off. They decided to wait.
For 2 whole days.
2 days. That engine sat undersupplied. And then a completely new crew comes on shift, realizes the truck is depleted, and they are forced to leave the station to go get the supplies.
And that's where the vacuum of procrastination becomes literally fatal.
While that engine was gone, solely because of a 2-day delay in taking initiative, a fire broke out directly across the street from their firehouse.
Across the street.
And because the truck wasn't there to respond in those critical first seconds, 5 children died in that fire.
I was just watching the faces of the youth while he spoke.
Me too.
Their posture completely changed. You could see their psychological walls just coming down.
Yeah.
Because the mentor didn't present those firefighters as villains. He presented them as normal people who made a really banal, everyday choice to manage their short-term comfort.
Overtaking initiative.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He showed these kids that procrastination isn't a time management issue at all. It's an abdication of responsibility.
It totally destroys the myth that procrastination only hurts the individual. I mean, sure, in that specific moment, 2 days prior, the crew probably felt this brief wave of relief by sitting on the couch instead of driving to the depot.
Right, that short-term hit.
But reality always collects on that debt. Procrastination steals your capacity to act later. When the fire broke out, the new crew had no choices left. The previous crew had spent their choices on comfort days ago.
It was so heavy. But to prevent the room from just spiraling into total despair, Coach Bob stood up.
Oh man, his confession.
I wasn't sure how he was going to follow up that firehouse story, but he brought the concept right back to the everyday biological reality for those kids.
He admitted that just the day prior to the session, he had intensely procrastinated on writing a business playbook.
Yeah, for someone he was mentoring.
And I was actually surprised he shared that. You have this highly successful businessman sitting in a position of authority, standing up and admitting a fundamental failure of self-discipline. I honestly wondered for a second if that would undermine his credibility with them.
Oh, I think it did the exact opposite. It built so much trust.
You think so?
Definitely. Because he described the physical consequences so accurately. He had 5 days to write this playbook, but he kept prioritizing other things.
Right.
And he described how when the deadline finally hit that morning and he was scrambling, he felt this intense physical tightening.
He compared it to a literal belt wrapping around his chest, squeezing his lungs.
The physiological manifestation of an avoidable threat.
And I saw half the youth in the room nodding.
Yeah, they know that feeling.
They know exactly what that cortisol spike feels like when they push a major project to midnight.
It was such a brilliant way to explain that procrastination is actually an emotional dysregulation problem.
Yes.
We avoid the task because the task makes us feel inadequate or stressed. But by avoiding it, we guarantee a massive panic attack later.
He was basically telling them, look, I still struggle with this. I still actively make my own life harder when I choose inaction.
It normalized the biological struggle, but refused to excuse the behavior.
Absolutely. And then Coach AJ tied all of these threads together, the apathy, the vacuum of procrastination, the physical anxiety, into this analogy that honestly fundamentally changes how we need to look at parenting.
Oh, the floodwater
A
still.
man on the roof, the water is rising, he's sitting on his roof praying for God to save him.
Right, we've all heard this one.
A neighbor paddles up in a canoe, tells him to hop in. The man refuses, saying he's waiting for divine intervention.
Yeah?
A police boat comes by, same response. Finally, the water is at his waist. A helicopter drops a ladder, and he waves it off. He drowns, gets to heaven, asks why he wasn't saved, and the response is, I sent you a canoe, a boat, and a helicopter. You refuse to grab on.
It's an old parable, sure, but Coach AJ weaponized it so brilliantly for that specific room.
He really did.
He looked right at those kids and told them, your parents and your teachers are the canoes and the helicopters.
Yeah.
They're constantly navigating the floodwaters, throwing out lifelines. A parent asking, hey, what's your plan for that science project? That is the canoe.
The teacher holding office hours is the helicopter.
Right, but the kids swat the lifelines away because the help doesn't look like the magical, effortless rescue they want it to be.
Which brings us to the most uncomfortable part of this whole deep dive. Because sitting in the back of that room, realizing these kids swat away the lifelines, it forced me to look at the other side of the equation.
Our role as parents.
Exactly. What does this mean for the parents listening right now? Because we are the ones constantly throwing those ropes.
We really are.
We send the texts about chores, we nudge about deadlines, and we get so exhausted when they ignore us.
But here's where we really have to ask the hard question about our own behavior. Are we actually throwing them a lifeline, or are we jumping in and swimming the marathon for them?
That is exactly the friction point. We talk about procrastination stealing choices. When a youth procrastinates on a project, the natural consequence is that physical panic and a failing grade.
Right. But what do we actually do as parents? The night before the project is due, we see them hyperventilating at the kitchen table. The belt is tightening around their chest.
And we just can't stand to watch them suffer.
So we swoop in. We stay up until 3 in the morning, formatting their bibliography and hot gluing their diorama.
We completely absorb the consequence that their brain desperately needs to feel.
Yes. We act as the helicopter, but instead of dropping a ladder that requires them to exert the energy to climb, we try to airlift the entire house out of the flood zone.
Which is so damaging.
If you constantly swoop in to rescue your child from the biological stress of their own procrastination, you are actively disabling their executive function.
Wow. Yeah.
You're robbing them of the data their brain needs to learn that inaction equals pain. They never learn to swim because you never let the water touch them.
I know it is incredibly painful to watch your child struggle, to let them feel that belt tighten. But if we intervene every single time, we are implicitly teaching them that their choices don't matter. Because an adult will always arrive to manage the fallout.
Exactly. We are essentially training them to be those firefighters who assume someone else will just restock the truck.
And we also have to look at the ripples we are creating in our own role. If we expect them to develop the initiative muscle, we have to look at the environment we are providing for them to train in.
Right. Coach Bob talked about the pond. What kind of boulders are parents throwing into the family pond every day?
That is such a vital point. Think about a parent who comes home from work, walks through the front door, drops their bags, and immediately launches into a tirade about the traffic.
Or their incompetent boss. Or the mess in the hallway.
They just took a massive, jagged boulder of adult-generated stress and hurled it right into the center of the family pond.
The contagion of attitude. Coach AJ explicitly stated that initiative and perception are highly contagious, just like a virus.
Right. If you walk into a room with a negative perception, you pull the oxygen out of it.
Precisely. You cannot demand that your teenager tackle their homework with cheerful, proactive initiative if the environment they're swimming in is constantly churning with your unchecked stress and complaining.
Man, that's tough to hear, but so true.
We have to model the emotional regulation we are demanding of them. If we want them to approach their responsibilities without whining, we have to audit how we approach our own. We are setting the weather in the house.
So, how do we translate this intense psychological mirror into practical mechanics at home this week?
Well, Coach AJ gave them some really practical tools at the end.
He did. He didn't just let them walk out with abstract thoughts. He made them pull out their pens and write down 2 specific commitments.
Yeah. The one big thing and the one small pebble.
Right. The first was their one big thing, the major, intimidating task they're actively avoiding right now. And the second was their one small pebble, a minor, positive act of unprompted initiative they were going to take.
And this is exactly where parents can step in tonight. Action number 1 is the one big thing conversation. Sometime today, just sit down with your child and ask one simple question. What is the one big thing you are procrastinating on right now?
Just ask the question, but I want to be incredibly clear about the rules of engagement here.
Oh, yeah.
Do not nag them, do not offer to fix it, do not pull out a whiteboard and build them a color-coded timeline. Just ask them to name it out loud.
The psychological benefit of externalizing the anxiety is huge. Have them write it down in big letters on a piece of paper, just like Coach AJ had them do in the room.
Naming the monster.
Exactly. When the anxiety is just swirling in their head, it feels like an insurmountable monster. Naming it strips it of its vague, overwhelming power and turns it into a concrete object.
But you have to let it remain their monster to fight.
Right. You're just providing the space for them to identify the target.
It's supporting them without enabling them. And the second action is about that positive contagion we mentioned.
The Starbucks story.
Yeah, Coach AJ closed out with this wild story about a Starbucks drive-thru. One person, completely unprompted, decided to pay for the coffee of the stranger in the car behind them.
And that driver was so shocked and moved by the gesture that they decided to pay for the next car.
And that chain reaction of pure positive initiative lasted for 41 consecutive cars.
People were paying way more than their own order cost entirely, voluntarily, just to keep the pebble rippling. Because positive initiative is just as biologically contagious as apathy.
So, action number 2 for the parents listening. Be the first coffee in the drive-thru of your own home.
I love that.
Cast the first stone into the pond this week. Do one small, tangible, kind act for your child or your spouse entirely without being asked.
Fold the laundry that isn't yours.
Leave a supportive sticky note on their bathroom mirror. Bring them a glass of water while they are hunched over their laptop studying.
And critically do not announce it.
Right.
Don't perform it expecting a parade or a thank you. Just silently inject the positive action into the ecosystem and see if that unprompted initiative begins to alter the behavior of the people around you.
You cannot demand a proactive household if you are waiting around for someone else to initiate the positivity.
Absolutely true.
Before we wrap up, I want you to think about this. What if the intense procrastination we see in our kids isn't a symptom of them not caring, but actually a symptom of them caring too much?
Oh, that's a profound thought.
What if it's a deep fear of doing the wrong thing, of failing, of looking inadequate? And if that's true, how does that change the way you react the next time you see them staring blankly at their homework?
It changes everything.
Maybe they don't need a lecture on time management. Maybe they just need you to help them lower the perceived stakes of taking that very first step.
Thank you for taking a few minutes to invest in your child's growth. If this message resonated with you, I encourage you to subscribe to our channel, like or comment on this episode, and share with other parents who care about raising strong, capable young leaders. If you would like to learn more about Martin County PAL or interested in supporting or partnering with our program, please reach out. This work only happens because of people who believe in meeting youth where they are and helping them grow into who they can become. We appreciate you being part of that mission.